Gee, that was a really fascinating, Chris. Where'd you go? That was so good. Thank you. I really appreciated that. And it's part of what I'm saying follows on from that, but I follow on from that as a poet. And so I come to you with this statistic, and there's not many times where a statistic has actually really changed the way I think and see the world. Often people think, you know, statistics, that's going to really move people and change people, but numbers actually really struggle to move us. And but this is one statistic that I read that just really did reframe things for me. So the statistic is that across the 4 Gospels, Jesus was asked 183 questions. And of all those questions, he directly answered only 3. Now, I was raised with Jesus is the answer. Fundamentally, that's how it works. And here's Jesus not directly answering 180 questions that he was asked. So instead of just answering the question, sometimes he asked another question back to the person. Sometimes he just started telling a story. And sometimes he did object lessons, you know, like he said, look at this coin, or look at that tree over there, you know. And it just completely, for me, it totally flipped my understanding of what Jesus was. And, you know, because when we feel like we have the answer, we want to say it really clearly to make sure everybody understands us in a TED Talk style talk, okay? That's what we do, you know? But here was Jesus just not doing that. He didn't just give the answers straight out. I think that's pretty interesting in the sense that, like, here's God who's come to the world, Jesus, right? And he doesn't sit down and write a nice clear book for us. He actually just starts living, hanging with people, occasionally dodgy people, and he just is telling stories. He's speaking the truth. Sometimes he says it really clearly and incredibly challengingly. But you know what? He doesn't write it down himself. He actually lets all the people that he's sharing with, he lets them take the story, take his words, and then they get to share it, pass it on, and then some of them write that down and what he says. And the thing that strikes me about that is that that's an incredible trust that God has given humanity. Like, I don't trust humanity that much. Like, but this is God seemingly trusting us, the humans that listen to Jesus, that they would pass on the right story, pass on the right words, pass on the truth. So that's anyway. That, you know, anyway. This is where some of those this statistic has led me to some of these places that weirdly and somehow Jesus speaking and not writing things down really clearly is actually incredible trust in humanity, an incredible trust in community and passing on stories and passing on the truth. So anyway, that's one little thought that I'd start with. And when I think about Jesus as not the answer, I'm not saying he's not the answer, but I'm also saying Jesus is also the question. That, for me, I think as a poet, that really resonates. I think the place of the artist, as a poet, I sit in there, is really often to ask questions and often to be a bit on the fringe. That's why so many artists struggle to be in the centre of orthodoxy and to be in the centre of a church, because the intrinsic nature of the artist is actually to pull back and to look back and to see inside and to reflect into. And so that sometimes that for certain communities that's really hard to give artists space, and sometimes it's really hard for an artist to be right in the middle of community, because I think the artist does often ask the questions. And in certain conservative communities that can be really difficult when artists ask the question and when somebody in their faith starts asking those questions as well. But I just think it's, I sort of really see it as a body of Christ sort of concept, that there are some people who will always be the fringe dwellers, always asking those questions, and that's just the body of Christ, you know. There'll be the other end who go, I got all the answers, here it is, do this, you know. And we need all those people within the scope of what Christendom is, what church is. And so for me, that's my place. I see my place as the inquisitor, the quester, the questioner, the interrogator, occasionally the joker, to go, hey, look at this, how does that work? Coming in from different angles. But it only makes sense if it's just me, then that's not good enough, because basically I'm not going to give the answers, you know. I need people like Chris to come and, you know, have some incredibly strong, clear words. Whereas, because I'll just go, hey, I'm not sure about this, but, you know, have a think about that. So that's, I suppose what I'm saying is that when those people are in that place of great mystery, there needs to be grace, you know, when people are caught in questions and stuff. And some communities struggle with that, you know, giving space for the questions. But there are some really great Christian thinkers that say it's really important. Oswald Chambers, who's has written so many beautiful devotions particularly. He actually talks about the difference between the common sense life and the spiritual life. So he says, the common sense life, what were his words? I think the common sense life is about certainty, whereas the spiritual life is about gracious uncertainty. And for me, it's like, for me that rings true, that true spirituality is actually not about control, not about perfection, not about even getting the door to this next world, but it's actually about this relationship with the divine, which is an experience, and also, like any relationship, it's uncertain, and you don't know how things are going to play out. And so it's not, the true great spiritual Christian life is not about certainty. I know exactly what's going to happen. It's about being certain in God, but that could lead to incredibly unknown places. So anyway, there's some of my thoughts. I want to just throw in a couple of poems, because that's what I do. And these poems came out of a series of a book called The Theologast. And the word theologast comes from the word theologaster. And a theologaster, I found in one of my very big dictionaries, is a word that hasn't been used for a few centuries, but I thought I'd bring it back. A theologaster is pretty much a poor, petty or try-hard theologian. And I thought, well, that sums up me at the moment. So this is just, these are little poems that are just made of questions, and I call them the Inquisitions of a Theologaster. Here it is. Even as a kid, I never liked finger painting. Too messy. Life's messy. Is my life a finger painting? Stuck to God's fridge? Prized for its sentiment and effort rather than its skill and execution? Do I have to become an adult of God? Or can I always stay His child? Is the voice of my God like the beating of my heart? So quiet, it's nearly impossible to hear, and so constant, it's nearly impossible to notice without a dramatic effort to stop and listen. Is the voice of my God rare, sporadic, or is it a streaming, rhythmic pulse at the very heart of who I am? Did God give me these poems? Was he glad to get rid of them? I mean, is this the sublime manifestation of divine inspiration? Or is it just me writing and thinking with the brain that God gave me? I mean, is God speaking inside of me or in spite of me? Thank you. One more poem for you. This is called A Herd of Elephants is in My Chest. I've always had questions in me. Big questions. They stomp around my chest. A herd of elephants. I mean, not full-sized elephants. These elephants are little, but they're still heavy and a little bit scary. Now, sometime in my late teens, they broke out. They prized my rib cage open and barged their way out between my bent backbones, and off they went out into the big wide world, grazing philosophical savannas, exploring theological jungles, and crashing through the endless mass media scrub. I never bent my ribs back into place. I mean, friends told me to get surgery, you know, to stitch up this gaping wound in my chest, but it wasn't a wound to me. It was an opening. And then slowly they started to come home. I mean, not all of them. Some of them found what they wanted out there. It was mostly the big elephants that came back. The muddied ones, thump by thump, they lumbered back in through my aching chest. Sometimes with, you know, gentle pushes, and other times with crushing shoves. And I found the only way to live with elephants blundering around my heart is to give them space. Let them sit if they have to. Let them go if they need to. I used to hear the beat of fear in their thumping and trumpeting, but now I hear the melody of curiosity. Now their insistent stomping and stamping is an anthem to the country of my being. Thank you.